Welcome back to Corporate Fuckery, the show that unpacks the cost of autopilot ambition and what it really takes to define success on your own terms. Today's guest embodies everything this season stands for: power with purpose, strategy with soul, and the courage to tell the truth about the systems that need to change. She has scaled mission-driven companies across healthcare, FinTech, and higher education. She is a speaker who has taken the stage at NACHA, FDX Global Exchange, and the 1871's Future of Canatech Summit. She's an award-winning artist, a payments industry innovator, and a creator of the first ever Payments Pulse event, spotlighting leaders from GoFundMe, Walgreens, and AeroPay. And in the last year, she's built a digital empire, growing from 0 to over 200,000 followers by redefining what it means to lead with empathy, advocacy, and truth. And she is proof that you can be operational and artistic, strategic and soulful, and still shake the system while you're in it. Welcome, Miss Beverly Dines.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. I'm so excited to chat with you. It's always so funny listening to your bio back, but it honestly just gets me so excited about our conversation because we got
I
lots
saw
of.
you glowing, and I wrote that with the intention that you could receive your powerhouseness before we even started. So here we go.
Thank
Here we are.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So for those that don't know Beverly, you just got a brief introduction, but she's a corporate truth teller too. And I have been drawn to her on the interwebs now for a while. And I reached out when I was pulling this whole season together, and I was like, hey, I love what you do. Would you be willing to hop on? And she was kind enough to say yes. But tell us, Beverly, what it means in your mind to be a powerhouse woman.
Oh my gosh. So I think, what resonates the most with that is removing all of the initial cliches that I think often wear down the ultra hoorah around that type of title, right? When you think of a powerhouse woman, you often hear strength, you hear resiliency, you hear power, you hear the ability to move forward through obstacles, and all of those things are true. I also believe that a powerhouse woman is someone who is rooted in a sense of not losing their empathy, not losing their humanism while on the path to greatness, while on the path to being excellent. And I think for me, where you're able to successfully balance that line behind not losing yourself in the game of trying to climb whatever ladders you find yourself climbing, while also having a sense of radical accountability, owning a sense of radical self-awareness and growth as you're doing the work. To me, that represents true power, because I think we're all working towards, especially if you are familiar with not only Lauren's content, but my own, you recognize the importance of the changing era of leadership. To me, a big part of that change, a major element of that change, is understanding that we can't leave our humanism at the door. And powerhouse women not only understand that, they embrace that, they welcome it, and see those dynamics, those human experiences as strengths, not as weaknesses that will make you less palatable or less likable in the hiring process as a leader. So to me, those are some of the kind of the base level things outside of, like I said, those otherwise cliches that you see at the conferences all the time about, no, it's about embracing all aspects of who we are as people, as women in this context, and in celebrating our intersectionality while we do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you totally spot on get what I am looking to achieve in this season, which are the lessons that we learned to help shed light on what it meant to step into that perspective. Because I'm going to just go ahead and guess. And I only bet on things when I know that I can win. But I'd bet $1 on this, that you might not have learned this the easy way. Is that true?
No, it can
Yeah,
never
and
be.
yeah.
I think that's the thing though, is you hear often God tests the strongest soldiers, or you hear you only learn through falling forward or failing forward. And I think I would agree with a lot of those elements. And I was just saying the other day to a close friend, it would have been nice if I didn't have to crawl an inch every way of my process. But I think it's such a story for so many of us, right? Especially when you're navigating a system that wasn't built for you. None of these systems were built for the vast majority of us. And so the fact that anybody anybody who is watching this or listening to our work has found success in their own way, despite the systems actively working against you. I mean, it's just a further testament to that innate power that people have that we often minimize, we often diminish because it's hard. And it was meant to be hard on purpose. I'm glad to be here. And also it's further affirmation that things got to change.
100%. So tell us about your climb, your pivot. What was a moment that you look back on where you're like, I thought I was doing all the right things? Because that's a lot of our storylines, right? Us powerhouse women who are here to make impact, leave it better than we found it, charge ahead, be determined to have what we desire in this world.
Yeah.
We find ourselves up against a wall. Where was that wall or pivot point for you?
So I think the biggest one, and I talk about this in my book, Create the Door, that kind of talks about how, and educates on how you yourself can make these pivots too, is when I graduated graduate school, and I was one of a small group of folks in my cohort who had gotten a job offer before graduation. I was feeling hot-ish, really. I was like, had all these internships behind me. I felt really good. I was excited. And this role was in New York City. I had all of the bells and whistles that you could ask for. And honestly, within that year, everything fell apart. Not only my relationship at the time, I was incredibly isolated. The role wasn't what I thought it was. I was experiencing adversity where I was working. There was so much that was happening all at once, and things that, in that arrogance, right, of myself being like, I've got it, right? Yeah. Woo, life taught me another one. And I looked up, and after being hospitalized the second time with a panic attack lasting longer than 72 hours, because for those who don't know, I was an on-call responder for many years on college campuses, and there's no infrastructure, or very little, when I was working in higher education on the res life side for navigating some of the traumatic, and I mean truly traumatic things. I'd go from seeing a student who had just attempted to end their life to trying to talk to a student whose parent just passed away to, and all of this is without sleep. All of this is you're on call all the time, let alone fire alarms in your building and so on. And I know anybody who has worked in res life will resonate with that reality. So if you don't have the infrastructure that you've built around yourself to process what you're experiencing, plus, again, the continued isolation, everything else, I mean, it all fell apart within a year. And I found myself literally packing everything in my Jetta with my dad, coming back. I'd only been there really a calendar year, driving back to Chicago, disheveled. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face when I came in the door, and she was just like, what happened to her daughter? I mean, it really chewed me up and spit me out that year. And I think a lot of it was because I had really thought, okay, I had followed the playbook, graduated college, went straight through graduate school, had the best job, had this, had the partner, had I'm in New York, I'm doing that. And I had lost myself along the way, years and years and years, and hadn't even realized that I had built a life and an infrastructure off of a thing that I felt validated on, that people kept telling me, you're good at this thing, you're good at XYZ. And in a quest for that validation, continuing to pursue and realizing, wait a minute, none of these systems I've put around myself are working, and everything went back down to base zero. And so I wound up going through quite a significant journey of course correcting on my mental health. Where did that kind of follow? Again, the fragmentation of having to deal with so much trauma and crisis response for many years. But then beyond that, I got a divorce. I was very young. And so I'm also processing that. Then I also am switching careers again. And that's where I went from higher education to healthcare and retail ops. I started working at a small clinic, and then also working part-time at a sports retailer, because I've been an athlete my entire life. I love competition. I love sports. And at the time I was working to pay off my divorce by myself. So when we talk about powerhouse women, how many of us have had to navigate these extreme challenges, where I'm very fortunate and very privileged that I had the backing of my family. I had the support of very dear friends, and I paid for that divorce myself, working 2 jobs. So as I'm doing that, I'm literally looking at, holy crap, what happened in my life? But in doing so, it made me realize, how can I still maximize what I'm doing now to still achieve the trajectory that I want to for myself? I knew I wanted to be a COO by the time I was 30. That was always a goal that I had for myself. And then from there, continuing to help people, heal people through meaningful work. Servant leadership is really important to me. And I said, okay, use this. And when I pivoted to working full time at that retailer, right? I said, do you guys have operations, leadership roles? They're like, actually, yes, we need a front end lead. And that kind of got me spinning on, okay, these what could be perceived as failings, because I'm sorry, who would not be embarrassed to tell their friends, I just got this hotshot job in New York, Didn't work out. I'm back
I mean,
home.
I don't know if you felt shame, like I don't
Oh my
always want
gosh.
it, but I thought I had shit the bed of life. Seriously, there is nothing more for me. I do not know how I'm
Oh
going
my
to do
gosh.
this and where am I going to go from here. It sounds
Big
like
time.
you were able to at least pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but
Mhm.
and because you wanted that COO role, but the shame that comes with feeling like you failed at something that A, wasn't built for you, and B, you didn't actually know about, you were not educated in how it works. You were just trying to make it work from the perspective that you had, is mind blowing if you think about it.
It is. And I think I love that you mentioned shame because I will say the first several months back home, decompressing from the situation, I mean, I just had this wedding and I
Yeah.
just, I'm doing all these announcements because that's the era too. I don't know, a lot of people do it now where it's the announcement era of on LinkedIn and so excited, and Facebook at the time. I'm so excited to announce that I've got this. I've let all these folks know. And I think there comes a point where when we think about powerhouse women, you don't, those voices start to matter less and less. And I think that was the beginning of me realizing, what was I doing all of that for? Was I doing that for me, or was I doing that for the presentation of how it would look to be, I got the ring, I got the job, I got the, well, huzzah, great. But also like it wound up actually not even being for my best good. And, or honestly, the folks around me, because I wasn't actually operating from my best self. Absolutely. I felt that, but I very quickly shifted to, and I've always been this way. I give major credit to my parents because my mom has always said, I don't care if you're a garbage person, be the best, own several garbage units, be the best garbage,
Yes.
And so I've always had that spirit of, you know what, I'm going to work at the sports retailer, but I'm going to climb my way up. And there was actually a period where they were like, hey, have you considered working at corporate level for us at this? Because I was making the most of that. And I think the overarching kind of motif in that is that really set the tone for me to go, okay, there's more than one pathway for me to be able to get to where I want to go. And I don't have to take a prescribed pathway just because everyone else has done it. And that's where I went from retail ops to then healthcare again, working my way to being a practice manager coordinator, and then transitioning to FinTech, working my way, and then transitioning. And I was a COO by the time I was 30. And so being able to sit with that at 30, being, whoa, I did it. But looking back at my trajectory, I've had people in interviews directly to my face say, on paper, your experience does not entirely make sense, but the way in which you've communicated the storytelling is, it all does. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching others how to do this, because it's all about relevance. It's all about applicability and embracing your own storytelling. That's the real power. Otherwise, other people are writing your story for you.
That's right. And it's funny because it sounds like we had very similar experiences just in trying to traverse industries. I had a very similar experience trying to move into Nordstrom. I wanted to work there. I used to walk up the street to go shopping in the shoe department multiple times a week when I worked in the business district down in Seattle. I was working in biotech at the time. And the guys in the shoe department, they knew my friend and I. They were like, "Oh, you girls are back. So cute." I want to work here. What does it take to work here? So I ended up meeting the EVP of HR in a parenting group because I had to sign up for a parenting group when I had a baby because I don't know anything about raising kids and I have no friends that have kids. So I sat next to her. We kicked off this whole relationship and she's, "Lauren, like your skill set does not match. Your skill set doesn't match what we're looking anything." And she didn't say it brutally, but generally it was, "Good luck as the EVP of talent management. I'm telling you, you're not a fit." And so fast forward, Declan was 2, maybe 3 when I got my job at Nordstrom. I walked in as a program manager within the operations space and ultimately got a promotion every 18 months. This was the trajectory though. This was the seduction of success that I was like, oh my God, not only did I overcome what somebody told me I couldn't do, but then I had such massive success to sit in rooms with executives and fly on private jets and have this whole persona that was grandiose and delicious. And it just felt like a house of cards. Just felt like I had built on a foundation that cost me so much more than my soul was willing to give anymore. And that was the unwinding of yours truly. And
And
for the
what was,
best.
I was going to say, what was the driver that attracted you? Because I think that's the other thing too, is we don't even know until we're swept up in it where the buttons are that push us to continue to chase after the dragon. For me, at least, it was the validation. And I realized because of my own experience from a very young age experiencing a lot of different things growing up. Seeking that validation actually wound up being the catalyst for me to continue to feed the beast, because I'm like, oh, wow, I'm being recognized for me burning myself out. I'm being recognized for overexerting myself. I'm being recognized for being available at 2 a.m. for things I should not be available for.
Yeah,
But
getting yelled at over Slack by your SVP at 1 a.m. for not having a PowerPoint ready for 8 a.m. I'm sorry, I sleep right now.
and the continued validation of, oh, they gave me a promotion, or oh,
Right.
I'm being, so it for me, that became that vicious cycle. What was that for you?
So it's funny, and I'm so glad because I'm going to turn and ask you the same question back in a hot sec. For me, my therapist was like, Lauren, you are so seduced by what success and financial security looks like for you that you are willing to chase whatever it takes. And I was so insulted when she said that to me. And I love her. I've been with her for a bit now. But I was like, what do you mean? And I started thinking about it. And truly, my last 6 years of putting myself back together and creating this version of myself, she was right. I had a lot of financial instability growing up as a kid. My parents went bankrupt. We lost our house. We went through some major stuff as a family. And corporate America gave me a sense of stability, consistency financially, and a sense that as an overachiever, I could overachieve and solidify my ability to take really good care of myself and my family.
Oh my gosh.
But what about you?
For me, it was going back to validation. I was bullied from a very young age. Some of my earliest memories are me being 5 years old and having the police at our house because I had been kicked off the bus, down the stairs off the bus by a routine bully. And that was unfortunately one of the least of the things that kid did, and others from the ages of 5 to really 15. And I think for me, a lot of it came from just a belonging, wanting to like just to belong truly, because I very much have prided myself on intentionality throughout my life and wanting to ensure alignment, wanting to give back, service, all of these things. And at the root of a lot of my behaviors when looking back, especially during that crumble period where I'm looking back at my whole life, right? And I'm like, and I will say, even from that year of realization, it still was many years later where even now, especially in this new era of me being a creator and still being a COO for fractionally for other organizations in the background, I'm still unpacking that. But I think for me, it was, wow, when I am achieving, when I am excelling, when I am helping move the ball forward, I belong. And I'm being told I belong, and I'm being told that I'm valued, and I'm being told that my work has value. And when those moments would happen where I would feel pushing, I'm still doing what was the status quo at the time, where I'm being told we love what you're doing, and the validation isn't coming. More importantly, those reiterations of being seen, I wanted to be seen and felt like that work was being seen. That is when the facade would start to fall away from me, and I'd go, oh shoot, okay, there's only one or two options. Either I leave, but if I leave, I was feeling celebrated here, I was feeling loved here, and belonging is, I mean, who doesn't want to feel like they belong anywhere?
100%.
But then if I move on, now I have to start from the ground up again. And so I always say that in my career, I've always left organizations probably 3 months after I should have. Because
Same.
I've always known, right? I've always known, okay, I think the time is up. But there's that part of you that's, you almost mourn the good things and you mourn the comfort that those spaces can give you, have provided you. You mentioned stability. I think that's for a lot of people right now who are struggling in the hiring market or in their roles in general. There's this term called job hugging that I was introduced to recently that just, to me, is so indicative of that scarcity mindset, that fear-based mindset of, I'm hugging this job that is torturous and making me struggle and but if I leave or if I go out in the market, which everyone is saying is terrible, right? What will happen to me? What will happen to that stability? And for someone like me, I'm like, dang it, I finally built up the social capital here. I belong. People are excited with me. They celebrate with me. They collaborate with me. Now I have to pivot and do this all over again. So I think for me, it was that deep wanting to belong, but in understanding that, what it really boiled down to now and where I've come to in my process is, it's not a one-way belonging system. It's not just me belonging and fitting and molding myself into what helps you feel like I belong. Because as a Libra, listen, we mold.
It is your season. When is your birthday?
Sunday.
Birthday.
Thank you.
Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
amazing. Happy birthday. What's your moon sign?
Virgo.
Oh, very structured, very
Very, yeah.
organized.
Yeah.
Yes, fresh look at all the things. You'd be great at operations with a
No,
person.
it's crazy how that
It's
all works out.
crazy.
And I'm a Sag rising. So,
Oh, so she likes to bring the fun. Yeah, the more fun, the better. Yeah.
yes.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, as I have, and going back to that survivalism, I had molded myself from a very young age to fit into the rooms that I needed to be in and mold myself into belonging in those spaces. Now, in this era, I'm like, oh no, I want to present myself as Beverly in every space I'm in so that I know right away if I don't belong here. Not me making you all feel comfortable with me molding myself into the version of me that you like best. And that took the dismantling of the deep rooted understanding of why I was actually positioning myself in the spaces the way that I was to be able to come to this place now.
I used to call it Gumbying myself. I know that I'm dating myself by using Gumby,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that.
Yep.
But yes, I would just contort myself into whatever position needed. And that was the trauma response of how I was raised and what I've been through, and also my desire to just continue to create acceptance and validation from people that honestly I probably didn't need validation from.
And that's the tough part, right? One of the best quotes that I have heard as of recent that I really have sat with, right, is do not accept feedback from folks you would never ask advice from.
So true.
And that really, I heard that in the last year and I went, oof. Because when I would get sometimes, especially mid-career, mid-management career, as I was really rising as a senior leader, I would receive constructive feedback. It wasn't just, oh, okay, great. It was like a gut punch. Every time I'm like, oh gosh. And I would take it home with me because I care so much about what I do and because I care so much about my commitment to growth. And that reframe of would I ask advice from this person in general? Not that you shouldn't grow and not that you shouldn't care, but no, I wouldn't actually. So
yeah, it's giving it a value scale of
yes.
how much percentage of this should I actually take? What is valuable for me to use and take forward and what is not at all? And
Exactly.
I had the same thing. I had one of the worst reviews in my life at Microsoft last year, and it came out of nowhere. My manager did not have the decency to even tell me that it was coming. So this is where corporate fuckery I know runs pervasive. But a lot of the leaders that we work with, we feel like we have to take and mold ourselves into their image of what they think. And I remember at some point being, I'm pretty sure you want me to just be a robot. She was commenting on my facial expressions and that sort of that
Oh
sort
my
of
gosh.
thing, which was, yes, I may have made an off face on Teams one day. There was a reason, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning on my first. I'm not trying to excuse myself, but I'm just saying, like, we're very sensitive to how we perceive people and their body language and all of that instead of making it something that's actually of value. And hey, what was going on for you?
Oh
Well,
my
what was going on when I made that face of trying not to lose my shit at 7:15 on the morning was you were shutting me down in front of all my peers. Would have been helpful for her to have that context, but
Oh my gosh. If
it
I
was
had
more about my face.
no, and I think it goes back to the policing, and I think especially as an intersectional woman, there's even more context to with the microaggressions and the other things too, where you're continuing to mold yourself and mold yourself until you really look up and you're like, okay, I go in and I'm so starkly different from who I am in my day-to-day life when I go into, and that actually is where that shift started for me when I headed into the FinTech space, because I realized, you know what, it actually is. I need to start reclaiming who Beverly is in all contexts now because as a professional, because the more that I had molded myself to the point about facial expressions, literally when I worked in healthcare, I had a sidebar conversation very similarly about, so you would have thought that I had literally done, honestly, one of the worst things in the company history.
Murder with your eyeballs.
Oh my gosh, how serious this was. And it was truly, Beverly, sometimes when you make faces, it's just really uncomfortable for people around. I said, okay, you make faces, we all make faces. Why mine specifically?
I actually feel like it's people's trauma response that they can't handle other people's perception, their perceived perception of your disappointment is what
Oh, of
actually is
course.
coming up for them.
Of course, because it goes, I mean, it totally counters against the status quo, right?
Yes.
Everyone is expected to nod out long and whatever. But I think in that same context, and I shared this on my TikTok and Instagram recently, at the same company, within the span of a year, I had lost one of my dearest cousins to lung disease. And then I think it was 6 months later, if not shorter, a dear friend of mine ended her own life or died suddenly. It's still nebulous, but either way, it was both tragedy within a very short period of time. And I come into work Typically, I'm very jovial. I'm very high energy, how people know of me in the zeitgeist. And I pride myself on that and having the zeal. But obviously, like anyone experiencing this, my cousin really was such a aunt-like figure for me. And watching her slowly pass it was just really tragic. But then having a friend die very suddenly and having recently spoken to her, it was just so much. And I'll never forget in my performance review going back to that of the whole thing where I got a meets expectations on culture and enthusiasm. And this is coming now. I was somebody who had paid out of pocket for almost the majority of our staff engagement activities. I remember going to the Barnes and Noble to their cheap section with all the games and stuff, making movie night packs for raffles and all kinds of truly above and effing beyond. Constantly thumbsing up, even after being in a car accident, and still smiling, and having a coworker of mine literally say, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" "I have to be here for the team." I was delusional with a fractured thumb and sprained neck and sprained ankle 3 days after the accident. It was crazy work. I sit in that meeting and she said, "Sometimes when you're at work, you're really up. And sometimes there's been a couple times this year when you've just been really down. And I've told you before how important it is to leave things at the door and how important it is to just maintain that level of professionalism. And you're not just sad, you're just really down and you won't say anything in a meeting or you just be very quiet." And I said, "You mean the times where I've lost people close to me and was unable to perform?"
Function, not even perform. Let's just talk about functioning, because that's really, as someone who is newly acquainted to what real deep grief is with two deaths in 4 months in my family, I'm like, ma'am, I cannot with people who can't give people credit, some grace for some grief. I mean, come on.
I mean, and I remember sitting there and going, and she goes, "Would you disagree that you think you exceed expectations?" And I couldn't even believe it. I said, and I started telling all the things I had done all that year, all of the initiatives I had done, everything that I had done above the college. I mean, hosting parties, all kinds of stuff for not hosting me personally, but like curating these opportunities for community connection at the company. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And she goes, "Now that you've shared it that way, I think you're right. We can bump that up because you're right. You have been really putting in a lot of work." Almost she was giving it to me. You're right.
Much for the gift to myself.
But the betrayal of it all, right, wasn't that I thought to myself, "Screw this, screw them. It's time for me to pivot." The thought I had to myself was, maybe I just need to work harder. Maybe I just need to do a better job of being conscious. Maybe she's right. Maybe I need to be keeping these things at the door. And I immediately went to self-blame. Because again, that validation, right? I mean, everything I've been doing all over there, and this is how, I'm being treated. It did a number. And I think about that because for so many of us, I love that you said just surviving, right? Just existing. Yes. I think the vast majority of people, especially in my community, we're surviving and we're trying to find each other, and we can't because of these systems that they're antiquated. I mean, there's the people who are facilitating these systems are facilitating an antiquated theme that isn't even being perpetuated anymore because the people who generated them are dead. They're gone. Yes. And so we have an opportunity to be able to be different, to be able to say, you know what? How do we show up for the people who, if our staff who are normally very jovial, very exuberant, they're suddenly incredibly dead. Maybe that's a call for us to say, "Hey, you've shown up for us, being the light in the room, being the light in the office, being that person who's positive. How can we show up for you?" And people don't forget those experiences. Not
100%.
Yeah.
I was talking about the golden rule on Threads yesterday because I need y'all to know, PSA, the golden rule is not about being a good girl, good boy, good person. It's about an energetic exchange.
Yes.
And those little efforts that are, "Hey, I heard you're going through some stuff. Hey, I heard you lost someone. Hey, I heard you're going through a tough time." That is what brings our humanity back into the space that is not human. And there's a lot, even sending cards or flowers, even having holiday parties, even any little thing that I think we've both been in corporate long enough to know that 10 years ago, there was a much different support system in corporate life, in many of my experiences, where the company or someone in the company was a representative to smooth some of those edges. And I don't know about you, but I don't see any of those edges being smoothed.
No, I think it's absolutely, you used to have company representatives who would show up to the funerals Akes and the Shivas. And there absolutely was that. But I think the difficulty, and I was just explaining this to my community on live recently, is there's this dissonance, I believe, between, again, leaders who are using antiquated systems, that over time, all of the infrastructural elements that compelled people to want to have the loyalty that you are expecting of your employees have slowly been whittled away down to scraps or non-existent. And yet, the confusion on that side is, why aren't people loyal anymore? Why aren't people bought in? Why are people quiet quitting? Why are people frustrated? Why are people job hopping? Why aren't people committed or hungry or whatever the case? When in reality, like you said, there used to be a golden watch at the end of the day. And when you could retire knowing you were set for life. Pensions existed. PTO was comfortable. There were systems in place to empower your employees, and down to, like you said, the sentimentality. I'll never forget when I was working in FinTech. I've had COVID 8 times. Yeah, working in healthcare during and then around towards the end part of the pandemic. That'll do that for you. And unfortunately, I wound up having a petite aneurysm when I was working in FinTech. And I had to leave, go to the hospital, this whole thing. And I will never forget, as long as I live, I just gotten out of the hospital after being at Northwestern overnight and trying to figure out what was going on. And I get a call from the CEO of the company I worked for. And I didn't answer because I just found out you have a petite aneurysm. And we hear a knock at the door. And we go to the door, and it's like the door opens, and there's the CEO of the company and his wife.
What?
And he said, Beverly, are you okay? I know we don't mean to jump on you. We know you're at home, but we want to make sure because it was a startup. So we were an intimate team. He said, I just want to make sure you're okay. They had brought flowers. They had brought edible arrangements. And I remember standing back and genuinely, and my now husband was at the door, and he was like, oh my God, we didn't even know how to react because you could tell he was genuinely, and her, genuinely concerned for me. And they have this beautiful arrangement. They were knocking on doors trying to figure out, they didn't know which apartment number I was in.
They're like, we've met all your neighbors.
Right.
We're number 8.
And it was so earnest. And I remember standing there being like, listen, take the time you need. Don't worry. Your job is here. We wanted to come and tell you, do not worry about that. You are part of this family. You're part of this community. Whatever you need, we've got you. And I have chills talking about it again because it was so coming from the companies I had been beforehand.
Right.
It was such a beautiful display of humanism that I had never experienced before at that level consistently. I'd had other leaders who have shown up for me and done similar things, but for a CEO of the company to show up to me, doesn't matter if it's a startup or not. And I think to your point earlier, I, from then on, and honestly in different parts, of course, throughout my career, but really utilize my time at that organization to zero in on, okay, what's the type of COO I'm going to be? Who am I going to continue to facilitate these systems? Or am I going to walk in this truth of, yes, this is the humanism everyone deserves? And so I was the person at the company who I always would say from HR, but they knew it was me. From the aerospace team, but they always knew it was me. I would be sending cards to people's houses or flowers when they had a pet that passed away or somebody passed away, or even a celebration when they had a wedding, or when there was, because this is the future of leadership. This is how people deserve to be shown up for and seen. And it takes 2 seconds. I had a literal, 1-800 flowers. It takes 2 seconds to set up an account. It takes 2 seconds to be thoughtful. And if leadership is doing it, if leadership's owning it, then that means that it becomes a part of the actual culture instead of these core values you say, but don't walk. That's my passion, is living in truth and action. And that's what employees want to see. They're tired of the pizza parties. They're exhausted by the happy hours.
Nobody needs pizza at work anymore. Let's just
give us maternity leave that's longer than 2 weeks. So it's being thoughtful and intentional.
Yeah. So, every episode that I do on this pod is about a lesson and how people can listen to us talk about very real topics and walk away with something that actually can make a change. This is how I create the ripple effect. This is how I pay it forward. So I want to know from you. And I don't know why I feel like asking this, but I'm trusting my gut here. I feel like there, in your little crumble period, in your rebuild, in what we talked about today, there was maybe some unconventional ways that you put yourself back together. Is that true?
Yes.
Welcome to my intuition. It is
Oh my
always on
God.
fire. Tell the people, because here's what I also know, because it was really true for me too, right? I never trusted my intuition. I told her to shut up so many times in corporate life because she always wanted me to do the right thing for myself. And I always was like, what do you mean I shouldn't be up working until the wee hours of the morning and up at 5 o'clock to go to the gym? I had to go through some woo-woo stuff to get here. So if you're up for sharing, and I know that this
Yes.
maybe seems a little different of a thread to go down, but I feel like the people listening to this are looking for answers in standard places. And the answers I feel like both of us found in some part did not come from a classical approach to
Yes.
healing.
Oh my gosh, I love this question because anyone who knows me personally is probably going to anticipate what I'm going to say. I found it through karaoke. And I want to break down how this happened. So while I was a pre-med major through and then bio major, bachelor's of science, I was also a theater minor. Always been a performer. I'm very blessed to be an award-winning actor and in a lot of different areas. And so performance and really the community of performance in theater and music I'm a 15-year plus classical violinist. I love music. I love art. And it happened during the pandemic where virtually stumbled upon some virtual karaoke nights that were happening in the pandemic. And then once things started opening up again, my now husband moved here to Chicago and it was Memorial Day weekend. It was pretty dead still because folks were still slowly opening up. And we found this karaoke spot that now we love them. They love us. We're the owners. We're all besties. And we stumbled in there and we were just having a really tough day after work, the both of us. And there was nobody in the bar, excluding like the owners and some of the regular bartenders. And we go up on this stage and we're just singing all night. We're singing and singing. And then that turned into once a week and then twice a week. And by 2024, I was bringing coworkers, I was bringing friends, I was bringing people on my kickball league, I was bringing associates. I went to a conference in Dallas. I'll never forget this. I went to a conference in Dallas where I was presenting, and we were at one of the events that the conference had planned. And folks, I could tell were still hungry for something after the event, right? And I just said in front of this group of these are Fortune 500 banking, SVP, C-suite. I said, "How would anyone feel about karaoke?" And these mostly men were like, "Can we do that? Can we go? Can we do that?" And I said, "Yeah, if somebody wants to get some Uber XLs, I already found the place. We can go." And a group of us piled into 2 to 3 Uber XLs and went to karaoke where we sang and had an amazing time all night. And again, I'm standing next to somebody from Visa. I'm standing next to somebody from, big companies. And it became a thing where at these organizations I worked for, I know what we could do after our event. I know what we could do after. And they're like, "Okay, Bev, we're going to go to karaoke." But one of the most beautiful things to me about karaoke and why I'm so passionate about it are really, I'll say 3 things. One, for me as a performer who did not feel up until very recently that I'd have that outlet again where I'd be able to perform again, because in corporate you are fit in this box. You are told once you choose this pathway, that's it. You don't get to be on Broadway. You don't get to do anything else. So you fight for where those opportunities are. And it wasn't until later I started auditioning and winding up being cast in shows again. So I broke that. But having that space to just release, belting and releasing in the music and playing, doesn't matter if you sound great or not, just releasing is so healing. 2, the act of community inclusion. There's something about bringing people into this space. And so many of us and people who are listening, you're like, you'll never catch me on a karaoke stage. And I've had so many friends who are, "We'll watch you," or "We'll sit over here."
I don't know. I'd get on a plane to Chicago to come karaoke with you,
Anytime,
Beverly.
anytime, literally anytime. And truly, I will have people who will sit next to me. They may not get up and sing on stage, but they'll sing from their chair. They'll join in community and sing together. They'll go up and they'll dance. And now this collective release is happening where it's your classic Spice Girls, all this stuff. People get up and they're singing and they're enjoying and they're releasing. They're releasing together in community. And there's a safety in that to me. And the third reason why I think karaoke has been, again, such a healing practice for me, and I do believe for folks who I have brought into the space ultimately as well, is because I have literally seen people go from the first couple times we go out together, I'm not gonna do it, and they're watching, they're super grumbly, they're on their phone, to weeks later, they're getting up, they're signing up, they're stepping into themselves, they're stepping into their power, and there's no pressure because you may never see these people again. And that's the beauty of it, is this is an opportunity for you to allow yourself the freedom just for one song, doesn't matter how silly, doesn't matter how drunk you are, doesn't matter whatever it is, for you to give yourself that power and step on that stage or step in that room or wherever you are. And the way in which I've brought engineers who are super, super shy. They'll all go up together in a little group and they'll perform.
They're like
And
YMCA it up.
very much. Backstreet Boys, all of it. And then you watch their faces as the crowd rises and joins with them. The validation that you showing up authentically as yourself was met with a positive response. So you fought through that fear to do anyway. To some, it's just karaoke. But to me, it has always been a spiritual experience. And I think it has being able to do that so consistently. And there were times deep in my process where I was going to karaoke 3 times a week because that was the only place I really felt I could creatively express in a container that felt safe and sustainable. But now, again, I have so many family members and friends who are like, okay, I guess we're doing karaoke. Our engagement party was a karaoke. And
I love that. Oh my God.
it is transcended. And I think it is, to me, that is a very real testament over the past 6 years where I have found, wow, it's been a really tough week. Who wants to go to karaoke? And the response of people going, you know what? Yeah. And then the laughter afterwards and the feelings afterwards. I mean, truly, it is. I at one point I was a regular at 10 karaoke spots here in Chicago, knowing the owners, everyone. And I think it helps too that I love singing crowd pleasers, so everyone gets up and dancing too. But there's something about when you're having a sad night, even up in the suburbs, when I lived in the suburbs, people coming in on a sad night, there's 10 of us in the bar. You know what? That's the vibe. Okay, we're singing Adele. And there's a community, we wrap our arms around them.
Yeah.
And we just,
sure.
all right, we're all singing Adele. We're going to honor that person's sadness. We're all singing sad today.
This is such a Sag rising thing to do. I just have to say, this is you embodying, and I'm convinced that the astrological rising sign of when you're not quite in alignment with who you desire to be, and I know how this sounds, but stay with me. For me, I'm a Cancer rising, and it was all about learning to take care of my home, my body. And that was learning kettlebells. I had always had this nudge that I was like, I think I'll get up at 5 a.m. and drive across Seattle and go to this Russian kettlebell class. I never did it because I was too busy to do it, and I wasn't schlepping across Seattle to do that. But when I discovered them again a few years ago, I mean, my whole outlook on how I care for myself changes. So for all the powerhouse women listening to this, I feel, and I'd love you to chime in here, Beverly, I feel like it's like trust that nudge of the thing that you really feel drawn to. I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's going to align with your rising sign astrologically if you're interested. And if you are, hit me up and I'll look up your rising sign if you don't know it or tell you what it means. But this is where we thwart ourselves. We throttle ourselves so hard to fit in the box that creative expression, whatever it looks like, just doesn't, we don't even have the imagination to explore what it could be. So we just shut ourselves off and decide that we're going to live as Gumby for the rest of our lives.
Yes, it's embracing the duality of passion and purpose. And one of my dearest friends, she's an engineer. She's a brilliant engineer, and she's a brilliant artist. Some of her art is in my house. She's a brilliant artist. I have friends who are brilliant educators, and they're brilliant singers. You're brilliant. You don't have to choose anymore. In 2025, especially for powerhouse women who are listening, I echo everything you're saying, Lauren, because we have been told and fed this lie because it's been what we had to do to survive, right?
Yes.
I want to give grace to the women who came before us. I want to give homage and respect to my ancestors who did what they had to do to survive, because there wasn't an ability to have duality in the times in which my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, that you had to mold and conform. Otherwise, you were not going to get the opportunities. And so I think for a lot of us too, I always want to start there because it is easy now in this era to be like, you got to move forward and do that. I want to pay homage and respect because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them and their work. And also now as we move forward, we honor them, we honor ourselves by recognizing we only are in the boxes that we allow ourselves to be put in. But removing the cliche of that, what do you do with that? How do you move in action? It is, like you said, finding the karaoke, finding the kettlebells, I love Legree. I recently discovered Legree. It's like Pilates, but a bit more intensive. And for me, it's finding those spaces where you can step into your truth. And I love you talking about the intuition piece, because especially as women, we are very good at gaslighting ourselves out of our own feelings, turning down our own feelings, shrinking down, minimizing our own experiences, because we are in a society where that's where our value is taught. Shrink yourself, make yourself small. And in action, I think I would ask anyone who's listening who has felt like they've been stuck in a box and don't even know where to turn, think about when you were a kid. What were the things that you felt drawn to, that you loved doing? You could sit around and do so for hours. And it doesn't even have to be a high stakes thing. For me, it was Sims.
There you go.
One way to get me out of my shell when I was exiting healthcare and coming into FinTech and really restabilizing was I would play Sims on Saturdays for hours. I would lose a whole day sometimes to Sims. And you would think in practice, like, really? I was mid 20 somethings. You're going to play? Yes, because when I was a kid, I would sit in my parents' house, play Sims because it gave me a sense of control. I was able to make the little worlds and make the little garters, have the babies, make the houses, design. Starting first with what were the things that really allowed you to escape the area you were in and trying it again. Doesn't matter if you like it or not, but it's acknowledging that kid, you knew something. They were onto something. Because when we say we want to be the astronaut or the actor or the singer, and you were the person who was making the Roblox, or you were the girl who was creating the robots or doing whatever it was, you were doing the makeup with your mom's makeup and you loved it and you felt like time flew. Maybe play in your makeup today and see how you feel. You know what? I'm not going to set a timer. I'm just going to play. And that can unlock for you not only an area to release, but also a potential area for you to investigate
and explore
as an avenue, not just to excel in, because I think also too as women, especially powerhouse women who are you first child?
Oh yeah.
Eldest daughter syndrome.
All the things.
Major eldest daughter syndrome. And I'm still struggling with this too, of when you do something for fun, just for the sake of the fun, not so that you can be an expert at it or make money or do whatever. Take that pressure off yourself and just try a thing and see if time escapes you. And if it does, that is a signal. If you look up and you're like, wow, 4 hours went by. Yes, not scrolling, actually tactically going into something that can nourish you. And I think the more you do that, the louder that intuition is. Nice. And I noticed that for myself too with karaoke, with my art. I'm picking up instruments again. I'm working on things like my book, other things. I've noticed little by little, my intuition has gotten louder and louder to now I'm making more decisions. And this is what I implore, not only you, Lauren, but anyone listening, to make continued decisions that are more aligned to the version of you that you can be proud of on that Forbes cover or in that magazine or on that TV screen, or even if that's not even what you want. If you just want people to leave you the heck alone, if you just want people to leave you alone and you want to travel the world and write your books or do nothing, whatever that version of you is, that best version, that's who you should honor now. And by doing so, you'll look up and you'll be her.
Exactly. And I teach about it as the sense of future me.
Yes.
The future me is my ultimate guru. She's already done everything that I desire to do.
Yes.
And there's nobody that's going to give me the answer more clearly or more understandingly than her. And so if I use her as my guide, then I can get to the other side.
To that point though, there's an activity I'd love to share here that it actually was very transformative for me. I was scrolling on TikTok earlier this year before anything with my platform took off. It was really during a period where I was evaluating again, because again, I hit 30 and I was like, whoo, everything all the women in my life had told me about hitting 30. I was like, whoa, like I'm really feeling like I'm coming into myself, but who is she? And what does she want? And what are her passions?
Wait until you hit 40, girl. Wait.
Oh my God. That's what everybody's saying. They're like, and then you hit 40 and it just keeps getting better from here. I'm like, I'm loving it so far. Especially powerhouse women who are listening, who are at the cusp, who are like 27, 20, 29. Oh, I thought the world was going to end when I turned 30. It has only gotten better from here. It has only gotten spicier, only gotten better. The Betsies are coming. But truly, I remember in January-ish time, I was scrolling on TikTok and this woman, and I cannot remember her username, but she said, if you are still struggling with some areas of your past and you don't quite know where that's coming up for you, I want you to sit in a quiet room. And I did this. She said, sit in a quiet room. And then I want you to visualize. And I want you to visualize a version of you who is in elementary school, a version of you who's in high school, a version of you who's in college, if you chose college or around that age, a version of you at the beginning of your career. And then to your right or left, I want you to have your future you. And I want you to sit there and I want you to have them visualize that they're all at a conference table and they're all sitting around you. And maybe also envision yourself in your 20s, 30s, that kind of area, depending on where you are in your journey. And then she said, I want you to visualize and ask each version of yourself, how are you feeling? Starting first there. How is little you feeling? How is high school you fit? Then ask each version of yourself, how can I show up better for you? And then finally ask each version of yourself, where do you feel I have still failed you? And I don't typically give too much into woo exercises on TikTok, but for some reason, and I do believe it was divinely led, I felt called to this exercise. And I sat down in the quiet and I had the lights off and I listened. And I thought there were things that I was like, okay, maybe something from childhood or maybe something from when I was a teen will come up, those kind of things. I was still surprised that there were betrayals I had experienced during that time, circling back now to my time in New York. When I was looking at that version of me who was disheveled, who had gained, I had gained over almost 100 pounds while I was there. Looking at her in that visualization, and when I got to the question of like, where do you feel I've still failed you? I just started weeping. I just started weeping looking at her. And I realized, oh, there's some things I still need to actually work through with myself and answer to and heal from that I had actually thought I had. I was like, oh, I've done with that time. I've moved on. I've moved forward. And so for powerhouse women who are listening to this, I implore you to do that exercise and really sit with yourself and ask each version of yourself, because you'll be surprised. Again, I was thinking, oh yeah, maybe something from when I was a kid. No, the thing I thought I moved on from, there's actually some residual elements there that really actually mattered, especially in this context, because I was fearing being perceived. And because I was fearing being perceived, I wasn't comfortable posting on TikTok. I was scared to post videos. And she was like, if you don't heal this, you're not going to be able to reach the people that you need to reach and the people you're going to be able to heal and help. And you got to do that because this is where you're being called to. And doing that on a cycle, like once or twice a year, I feel will be incredibly revealing for women who have also experienced trauma, have experienced adversity, have experienced the suppression, because we're taught, especially as Black women, we're taught you got to move twice as fast and move half as far, and you suppress and suppress because so many of us don't have time or even the energy to look back. And I'm so glad that so many of us are reclaiming that time in this period. But for any powerhouse woman, no matter what your background is, you're a woman wherever you are. So 9 times out of 10, we've experienced some type of trauma in this world. And so sit down and really talk to yourselves. Literally.
Yourselves. Yeah, and I think that, and I know we've been on forever. We could talk all day. So
Truly.
we'll let this be our last little wrap up for this episode, and we'll have you come back on another day. I used to hate the past versions of myself. And I think a lot of us carry that same shame, disappointment. I should have known better. I was so stupid back then. I was so traumatized back then. Whatever it is, whatever your talk track is. And I can say honestly now, I can see them all very differently, with a lot more compassion, a lot more empathy for what they actually were navigating. And when you know better, do better. And that is really going to take you far from understanding that what you've been through isn't necessarily what you're going. And that's why I do the work that I do with the subconscious mind, because the way our mind perceives information and processes information is critical to what we're experiencing right now and what we're able to create for ourselves moving forward.
100%. 100%.
Beverly, I adore you. Honestly, I'm going to move to Chicago. We're going to just go karaokeing. I have these big plans for us. My husband and I were in Chicago a couple of years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Down on Fifth Avenue. And it was really my first trip. I had been years ago when I worked in biotech, but Chicago's a great city.
It's amazing. Wow. And if you're listening to this in the midst of everything that's happening and surrounding it, do not listen to the rhetoric. I am here in the city. People are coming together. People are celebrating. People are finding joy. They're coming together in unity. There's no city like Chicago. And I'm privileged to be a creator that's based here, because there's a energy of resilience and joy and celebration that I think is going to catalyze ripple effects across the country. So when you come here, we'll get you the real Chicago treatment.
Yeah, I am down for that. I will definitely be back for that. Thank you so much for all of your delicious time today, your generous time, all of your wisdom. I'll drop all the information down in the show notes below. But
thank you for having me.
Great to talk to you, of course.